I have a lot of Snapchat friends. It's an app that I've used since I was probably in middle school. Over the years, I've gained countless friends. Most of them I know, but there's a good number that I also don't know. I think that happens on just about every social media. So I remember that on my Snapchat, there used to be this one guy that would often post really strange stories, and I didn't even know what he looked like or who he was. I don't even know how or when we became friends. But this guy would post stories that I would occasionally see. They would never be of his face or anything. Most of them were just videos of him walking late at night, and he would just show sometimes his feet and the surroundings of where he was going. It would always be strange because there was no context around it. So after seeing those a few different times, it made me wonder when I even became friends with this guy on Snapchat. I really didn't remember. After one night I saw him post a video, I actually slid up on his story. He had posted what appeared to be him walking through the woods. I texted him saying, "Why do you always post these stories of you walking at night?" I was legitimately curious, but he left me on read. That was really strange. Well, a couple of nights later, he was back at it again with another story. This one was very similar to the typical ones of him walking at night, except this time, I noticed the location of where he was appeared to be my driveway, because he was walking up it, and I saw my car parked where it always was. My heart started racing instantly when I saw it. I saw that the story had been posted just 5 minutes ago. I got up and looked out of every window in my house. I didn't see the guy anywhere. After not locating him, I actually went out my front door to go look outside. I went around my house and looked, but did not see anything. Then I went back inside. I texted the guy once again, asking why he was at my house. Once more, I was left on read. This guy was really starting to make me angry. Still, I didn't know what else I could do about it. Shortly after that, I went to bed. The next morning when I woke up, I went on Snapchat shortly after, like I often do. When I did, I saw that there were several more stories that the guy added from the previous night. One was another one of him walking up my driveway. Then there was another. This time he was in my backyard. By then, I was very creeped out. Then he showed another story. It was him somehow opening one of my back windows from the outside. Then it showed him entering my house. After that, the story stopped. When I saw this, I got up, ran to my bedroom door, and closed it. Then I locked it. I was afraid that he was still inside. I called the police and told them the story. When they arrived, they searched my entire house. The guy was gone, though. He must have left sometime in the night. I gave them the information that I could. The police also saw that my back door was left unlocked, so that's most likely how he left. My back window was somehow left unlocked as well, I guess. I blocked the guy on Snapchat after this. I lived in that house for a few more months and never saw him again after. Since then, I haven't heard from him. I wonder if he's still posting those creepy stories. The fact that he got into my house, though, is something that will always give me the creeps.
I'm currently a senior in college, and this story took place during last year. I'm an engineering major, and have taken some pretty difficult classes in recent years. I always study better in the library or classroom than I do in my room, so I would often go find a place to study and get my work done. I remember that this past spring, finals week was approaching, and I had several big projects due, so one Friday night, I decided to go study in a classroom. I know it's not something most people like to do on a Friday night, but I had some plans for the weekend and wanted to get it done beforehand. I went to the engineering hall at about 9 p.m., and when I arrived, it was locked. When this happened, I could call a security guard, and they would unlock the doors for students if you showed them your ID. Then you could use the building to study. I did this, and when the door was unlocked for me, I entered and saw that nobody else was in there. It was strange being in there with all the lights out at night, and I went down one of the first hallways where there were some classrooms, and I entered the first one, which I happened to have a class in, and I turned on the light. Then, I found a desk, sat down, and began working. I got really focused and was getting a lot done. Maybe about an hour passed when I heard footsteps come out of nowhere. I looked up to see the classroom door open and a guy walk in. The man was wearing a red sweatshirt, jeans, and a baseball cap. He stood in the doorway and asked me if I minded if he studied in there as well. I was sort of annoyed by this, because there were plenty of other classrooms he could go to, and nobody else was here. I didn't even know who this guy was. I told him sure though, because I didn't want to seem like a jerk. He had a backpack and set it down at the first desk in the front of the room. Then he sat down at the desk. I went back to work at my desk, which was more towards the back of the room. I sat at that one because that was where my seat was in class, and I was just more comfortable there. After several minutes, I glanced up at the guy, and I noticed something strange. His backpack was still on the ground next to his desk, and he hadn't taken anything out of it. He was just sitting there in his desk, staring straight forward, it seemed. He wasn't even on his phone. I went back to work, and over time, looked over to him a few more times, and nothing changed. The guy was just making me uncomfortable, and I was losing my focus. Plus, it was getting late, almost 11 p.m., so I decided I would pack it up and leave. I closed my laptop and put it in my backpack, along with my book. I then got up and walked to the door. As I passed by the other guy in the room, I saw that he was still just sitting there, and I could feel his eyes watching me as I left. I walked down the hall and out to the main entrance of the building. That's when I heard footsteps coming down the hallway. I just knew it was the guy, and he was leaving now. Nobody else had been in there. I was getting suspicious of him, and I picked up my pace in walking. I left the building and went out to my car in the parking lot. When I got outside, I noticed there was just one other car in the parking lot, and sure enough, I saw the guy come out the doors and was headed for the car. I drove off to go back to my apartment. It was only about a 5-minute drive, and I lived just a few blocks outside of campus. I drove there with the guy tailing me in his car. I parked in my parking space and got out to go inside. I noticed that the car the guy was in parked a few spaces away from mine, but the guy stayed inside the car. This made me feel a little better for some reason, although I still didn't know what he was doing. But I went inside my apartment and then went up to my window to watch. I knew the guy didn't live here because there were only 8 units, and I had seen everyone else who lived there over the course of the year. Plus, I had never seen his car before. The guy stayed sitting in his car with the lights on for quite some time. So long that even when I was in bed about to fall asleep, I looked out and saw that he was still there. By then, it had to be about 2 a.m. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up, and when I looked out the window, the guy was not there anymore, thankfully. I went outside, and when I did, I noticed on the outside of my front door, near where the lock was, as well as on the side of the door near where it opened, there were noticeable scratches and small dents that hadn't been there before. I think that guy tried to break into my apartment during the night while I was asleep. I always wondered who he was and why he did this.
A couple of months ago, I had a scary experience on Snapchat. I remember that out of nowhere, one night, this random creepy guy added me. Well, I didn't know who he was at first, so I added him back out of curiosity. I thought that maybe I knew him, but he sent me a snap a very short time later. When I opened it, I saw this guy who I did not recognize, but he was in a dark room using the flash and holding the camera extremely close to his face. His face looked disturbing, to say the least. I'm not sure if he was trying to be creepy or what, but he sent like 4 pictures, all right in a row, and said hi to me. After seeing them, I asked him who he was. He started sending more snaps. I didn't even want to open them though. The man sent more creepy pictures of his face really close up when I finally did. He told me that he was going to come over. I quickly turned off my location, which had been on. Then I decided to just delete the guy. I should have never added him back in the first place. But I didn't know, maybe he was somebody that I knew or something. But after I had deleted him, there were still a few snaps that he had sent before he had been deleted. I opened them. One of them said, "I already got your location." That one really creeped me out. I just hoped that he was only trying to threaten me or something. Maybe he didn't actually have my location. And even if he did, maybe he wouldn't come over. This was already nighttime, but it wasn't that late. So for the rest of the night, I was at home and nothing happened. By the end of the night, I had forgotten about the whole ordeal. But I would soon be reminded, because when I was starting to get ready for bed, there was a knock at my front door. I had a bad feeling about it immediately. I mean, who knocks on somebody's door at almost midnight? Still, I had to see who was there, so I walked into the living room and looked out of the window. And that's when I saw this man standing there. It was the same guy who had been Snapchatting me. I was so creeped out. I ran back for my bedroom and hoped that the guy would go away. When I had reached inside my room, though, I heard some loud noises. The guy was not knocking on the door, but seemingly trying to open it. I I got my phone out and called 911. I told the operator that somebody was trying to enter my house. I gave my address and name and hoped that somebody would be there soon. But after this, I didn't hear any more noises from the front door for a while. Still, I wasn't going to leave my bedroom. Moments later, I heard a noise from the back door to the house. The guy was trying to get in there. Then there was more loud noises. It sounded like he was maybe trying to break the window. These are just educated guesses, because I couldn't see from where I was, but that's what it sounded like. I stayed where I was in my bedroom, and luckily, the police got there much faster than expected. Before I knew it, I saw flashing lights from my bedroom window in the driveway. The man was still in my backyard. He tried running away, but the police were able to catch him. It was probably the best scenario that I could have hoped for. I still don't know how the guy knew me. I didn't recognize him at all. This is something that happened back when I was in high school. So one night, I was at home and in my bedroom. It was pretty late, and my parents and siblings had gone to bed already. My room was at one end of the front corner of the house and on the first floor. I often stayed up pretty late back then for some reason. But I remember that out of nowhere, I got this call on Snapchat. I didn't recognize who it was from. I don't even remember the username. It was something really hard to memorize. When I looked and didn't know who it was, I was very curious. So I actually decided to answer it. It was not a video call, but just a regular call. When I picked it up, at first I heard nothing. I asked who was there. Then I heard this whisper coming from the other end. I really couldn't make out what was being said though. I was trying to understand and turning the volume up on my phone. Then I made out a few words, but not much. I asked again who was calling, but the person hung up. Now, I guess I had some type of setting on my Snapchat where just anybody could call me or send me pictures. Because shortly after this person hung up on me, I received a snap from them. I was very curious, so I opened it up. What I saw was somebody wearing a full clown mask taking a selfie. It was very strange to say the least. I sent them a message, again asking who this was, but unfortunately I did not get a response to this. Well, I thought that was that. I was a little freaked out by the whole thing, but the rest of the night nothing happened, and the next day things were fine. But that next night, I found myself alone in my bedroom late at night again. This time, I remember that I was sitting at my desk. In front of it is a window that sort of looks out to the front yard. You can also see part of the street. I remember noticing somebody walking down the street. It was very dark, so I couldn't see that well, and at this late night hour, it seemed odd that somebody would be out walking. But then the person came closer, and I realized that it was some guy wearing a clown mask, the same type of one that the guy was wearing who had snapped me the night before. I thought this was very weird when I saw it, but this guy did not walk into our yard or anything. He just continued to walk down my street. I moved out of my bedroom and went into the living room to keep watching him. He continued to walk down the street until he was soon out of sight. Then, after that, I never saw him again. I blocked that account that had snapped me, and since then, nothing more happened. I'm still curious about it though. Was that clown the same person? It had to be. How did he know me though? That's what I'd like to find out. Last year, I lived in Oregon for the year. I don't live there anymore because I changed companies. I moved into a house about 20 minutes outside of Portland. The area was pretty nice and I enjoyed it. But just my third night living there, somebody tried breaking into my house. I was setting up a TV stand in my bedroom when I heard some noises coming from the other side of the house. I started to walk over, wondering what it was. I made my way out of my bedroom through the hallway and near the dining room. When I was walking over to the dining room, I heard the back door open. I was not expecting that. I backed up a few steps, and I briefly heard footsteps in my house, and then they turned around and left, and I heard the door open and close again. I went over to my side window and looked outside. I saw a man walking away at a pretty fast speed, but as he was walking away, I got a really good look at his face. He was about average height and had dark brown, kind of messy hair. I went over to my back door and locked it. I'm not really sure how the guy got in, but next I called the police. They came out to my house, but the man was long gone by then. I gave a description and all the information that I could, but it really wasn't much to go on. I was hoping that the police would be able to find whoever had done it, but after they left, I didn't feel too confident. I just didn't really feel like I gave them enough information, and the man would probably be long gone by now. I was a little bit concerned that whoever the guy was would be back. A few days later, I was outside doing some yard work. I was pretty close to the street, and I noticed somebody was walking down it in my direction. Beyond that, I didn't pay much attention because I was focused on what I was doing. When the man walking down the street reached me, he did not walk past, but he stopped where I was and said hi. I turned around and saw the guy. It was the same man who had broken into my house. He was smiling now and asked me if I had just moved in here. I tried to act normal and I said yes. He was really friendly and said that he lived just down the street. We talked for maybe a minute, but I wasn't able to keep the conversation going very well for obvious reasons. I'm not sure if he picked up on it or not that I had seen him. I really don't think that he thought I had seen him at all. Why would he go over to me if he did? After we talked, he walked away. I went back to the police after that and told them the information. It turned out that the guy did in fact live on my street, but he denied it, and the police had no solid evidence, so I couldn't really do anything. I did install a security camera at my front and back doors. However, nothing else strange happened. I don't live there anymore, and I'm glad that I don't have to live near that guy. I still wonder why he was trying to break into my house, though.
I've had a Facebook account for many years now. I think that I made one when I was about 13 or 14 years old, and this is something that happened back then. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but I know I was a teenager. So I would go on Facebook all the time, probably several times a day on average. Well, one time I ended up getting hacked. The way I found out was that I got a text from one of my friends from school. She told me that she thought my account had been hacked. I logged into Facebook and saw that my account had made several bizarre and random posts late the previous night. Some of them were as if somebody had just dragged their hand across the keyboard and hit send. Others were strange sentences of words that didn't really make much sense. I was really embarrassed. There were even a few comments from friends with question marks on some of the posts. I didn't know who would do this to me or who would know my password. As I scrolled down on my page, I saw that there were even more posts that were made from my account. I quickly changed my password, then looked at them. Most of the posts were made within a 2-hour window the previous night, from about midnight to 2 a.m. There were about 20 posts in total. Then I got to one of the first ones that had been made. This post was the only one with a photo attached to it. It was a picture at nighttime of the house that I lived in. At the time, I lived there with my parents and 2 older siblings. The post said, "This is where I live, everyone." It looked like the photo had been taken from our driveway, possibly the street. When I saw that, I was so creeped out. But since I changed my password, whoever this was would not have access anymore. I quickly deleted every post that they had made on my account. Then I wrote a post saying how my account had been hacked the previous night, and the posts were not made by me. But after that, I never found out who did it. I asked several friends, wondering if it was a joke or something, but they all denied it. I've even asked some of them years later, but nobody ever admitted it. And to be honest, I just don't think that it was any of my friends. It could have been someone I went to school with, possibly, or somebody that I don't know at all. I never found out. But the fact that they seemingly were at my house after midnight really gives me the creeps. This is the story of when I lost my phone at a park several years ago. It all happened one night when I was running. I would do lots of jogging for exercise, and this one park in particular was my favorite to go to. It was about a 10-minute drive from my apartment, but it had miles of trails, and I found that hardly anybody else was ever there. One time though, when I was jogging, my headphones died when I was almost done. This is probably why I didn't realize I dropped my phone, because my music wasn't on, and I would have noticed it turning off. I would always jog with my phone in my left pocket. It must have just fallen out or something. I was kind of surprised that I didn't notice. When I got home that night is when I realized that I didn't have my phone with me. I realized it could have been anywhere on the trail. I first looked in my car, but when it wasn't there, I drove right back to the park. I retraced my steps and spent about an hour trying to locate my phone, but I couldn't find it. I wasn't sure what to do. I really needed my phone, so the next day I went and I bought a cheap one to use until I either found my phone or decided that I would have to get another one. The next day after work, I went back to the park again. I looked again, but came up empty. I was almost certain by now that somebody must have picked it up. Then, later that night, I was on Facebook. I was on my laptop, just on my homepage, when I came across this post. It had been shared quite a few times, and I saw that somebody had posted they found an iPhone. It looked like mine, so I clicked on the post. This person said that they found an iPhone in a park and were trying to locate the owner. They asked people to share the post in hopes that the owner might see it. The phone was locked, so they said they couldn't find out who it belonged to. Right away, I contacted the person who made the post. It was a guy named Rob. I told him that I was sure this was my phone, and I asked him if I could meet him to get it back. He said yes, and suggested that we meet at the same park where I lost it. I was more than fine with that, but when he said to meet at midnight, I was confused. Of course, that instantly made me curious and also suspicious. I asked him why and said that that was really late. The guy claimed that he worked odd hours and was really busy. He said that that was literally the only time that worked for him. I ended up saying fine, because after all, it was a Friday and I didn't have work the following day. Still, I was very suspicious of Rob. Now, when the time came, I drove to the park that night. In the entrance of the park, there was a parking lot which was empty. Then there was a little bit of a field, several entrances to paths, and lots of woods. So I parked my car at about 11:50. Nobody else was there, so I waited. At midnight, I contacted Rob, saying that I was at the park. This was the only parking lot, so I knew he would have to come here. He did not immediately respond to me. I kept waiting and was getting more and more frustrated by the minute. Then I got a message from Rob. He told me to come to the path and said that he had walked there. This confused me even more, but I really wanted my phone, so I got out of my car and looked around. It was completely silent other than leaves rustling in the wind. I took a few steps towards the path. It was in that moment that I saw what appeared to be two large men coming out of the woods. They were walking in my direction, but a long ways away. By now, I was probably like 50 feet away from my car. As soon as I saw these two guys, I started sprinting back for my vehicle. When I got there, I did not bother to look back to see where the men were. I instantly left, driving away and out of the park. I went all the way back home. When I got back, I went onto Facebook and was going to message Rob. I saw that his previous message had been deleted. I sent him an angry message, accusing him of setting me up, trying to rob me, and I said that I was going to the police. He responded denying it, claiming that he was just running late and would be at the park soon. I called the police. I told them the entire story and showed them the messages on my phone. Then I asked Rob to send me my phone in the mail. He was hesitant and claimed that he couldn't do it. However, the police contacted him after that. After they got involved, he finally gave me my phone back. Unfortunately, there was no proof that Rob got those guys to come towards me in the woods. I believe 100% that he was setting me up to get robbed or something. I blocked him not long after. Hopefully, I'd never see him again. This is something that happened years ago now. It all started one day when I went on Facebook and saw that I had a new friend request. It was from a woman who I didn't know. We did have a mutual friend, which was somebody that I was barely friends with, but lived in the area. I accepted her request without giving it too much thought. I did not click on her profile to learn more about her or anything. Later in the day, though, I noticed that she sent me a message on Facebook. I logged back on and saw that she said hi to me. I responded saying hi back to her, and after that we had a brief conversation. The conversation that first day was not too long, just kind of back and forth getting to know each other. But the only thing that this woman really told me about herself was that she was my same age and that she worked in a nearby city. She seemed pretty nice for the most part though. That night, I thought that I saw her at my house. This was probably like 3 hours after our conversation on Facebook. I noticed this car parked across the street from my house on the side of the road. It was an unusual thing to see, and I just randomly noticed it. But when I did, I also saw that there appeared to be a woman in the driver's seat of the car, and she looked an awful lot like the woman messaging me on Facebook. This was really weird. I moved away from the window so that she wouldn't see me. Then I wondered to myself if this woman was possibly one of my neighbors, or if she was at my house for some reason. A short time later, I checked the window again, but she was still there in her car. I thought about messaging her on Facebook, but decided not to. A while later, when I checked the window again, the car was gone. For the rest of that night, I was left wondering what exactly that was about. I was creeped out by this, and decided to stop messaging her. But the next day, she messaged me again. We had kind of ended our conversation the previous night. When I had told her that I had to go because I was cooking dinner, she said okay. Then I had not said anything back to her. But now, on this day, she said, "Hey, what's up?" to me. I didn't respond. But just a couple of hours later, she said, "You there?" I finally responded. I asked her what was up, and she asked me how I was doing. After I said good, I asked her what city she lived in. She named a city that was close to mine, but not the same one. This ruled her out as being one of my neighbors. I didn't want to mention that I saw her parked on my street the previous night. I continued with the conversation for a short time, but then the woman asked to meet up with me. She said a time and day, but I told her that I was busy. She continued to message me and then started to become rude. The woman seemed to be upset that I declined her request to meet. I then confronted her, saying that I saw her at my house the previous night, but she completely denied it. At that point, I blocked her. This was just too weird, and I wanted to put it behind me. When I blocked her, I did feel better, but I also knew that she seemed to know where I lived. I had a feeling that she might show up again, and unfortunately, I was right. That very same night, she was back. This time, though, she knocked on my front door. I was in the kitchen when I heard it, and I think it was about 8 p.m. I walked over to the front door, and after looking out and seeing the woman, I moved back. However, after she knocked again, I heard the woman then shouting at me that she knew I was home. She demanded that I let her in. I went to the door, and without opening it, I shouted that I was calling the police if she didn't leave. But this didn't stop her. She stayed at my front door, occasionally knocking on it. When I realized that she wasn't leaving, I did call the police. I stayed in my living room near the front door. The woman remained there the entire time. About 15 minutes later, the police got there. I heard the woman arguing with them for a while. Eventually, though, they got her to leave me alone. She was told that if she came back to my property again, she would be arrested. I was afraid that she would, but luckily, after that, I didn't see her again. I really don't know what her problem with me was. I also don't know how she even found me in the first place. After this happened, I contacted the one mutual friend that I had with the woman to find out more. Like I said, the mutual friend that we had was a guy that I barely knew. We had gone to high school together but never really talked much. We knew who each other were though. When I asked him, he told me that he honestly had no clue when he became friends with the woman or who she was, so I didn't really get much clarification there. I'm just happy that the woman actually left me alone after that. My friend Anna and I were staying in an old motel in the middle of Nebraska for the night. We were on a 1-week-long camping trip, checking out national parks and camping out in nature. However, this particular night, there was a huge rainstorm coming. We decided that it would be smart to stay in a hotel room for tonight to avoid a terrible stormy night of sleeping and having all our gear getting soaked. The closest motel we found was a small cheap strip of rooms in the middle of nowhere. We bought our room for the night from the redneck-looking guy working at the front desk. The rain started early in the evening, so we ended up staying in our room all night, drinking and playing some games to pass the time. Anna and I went to bed around midnight, and it was easy to fall asleep to the sound of the downpour of rain coming down all around us. I woke up at some point in the night, not exactly sure by what, but I noticed there was light pouring into our room. I sat up in bed and glanced towards the door where the light was coming from. We had chain-locked the door where it could be opened just a crack, and as I was fully awake now, I realized that's where the light was coming from. The slim shiver of light shone all the way into the room, stretching its way across the floor to the foot of my bed. A quick glance over at the bed next to me confirmed that Anna was still sleeping, and it was not her who had the door open. Now fully awake, I decided to get out of my bed and check it out. Once I got past the foot of my bed, the doorway entered my view, and I was shocked by what I saw. The door was indeed open a crack, just as much as the chain would allow, and an arm was reaching through the crack, fumbling around trying to undo the chain that was the only thing keeping the door from being completely open. Instincts and adrenaline took over for me immediately. I ran towards the door and slammed my whole body weight against it, forcefully closing the door onto the arm that was still reaching through the crack. I heard a grunt on the other side, and the arm withdrew from the crack, and whoever was on the other side vanished. Anna, who was awoken by all the commotion, called the police, alerting them that there was an attempted intruder at the motel we were staying at. It was close to 5 a.m. now, and even though it was early, Anna and I agreed to pack up our stuff and hit the road. As we left our motel room, the police were already at the front desk talking to the worker. We were approached by a cop and asked if we were okay and if we saw who the culprit was. The man who was working at the front desk also appeared and kept repeating that he didn't see anyone while he was working. Funny enough though, he was holding his right arm very gingerly, and even when he wasn't holding it pretending to cross his arms, it hung oddly at his side. Right before heading out, we informed the cops that we suspected it was the guy working at the front desk who was attempting to enter our room. They told us they would look into it, and that's the only information we were given before we drove off, continuing our journey. I have no idea if they ever confirmed that the man working at the front desk had been the one attempting to enter our room. It was comforting to me, though, that even if the man didn't face any legal actions for that night, I had either broke his arm or severely injured it. Perhaps that would stop him from trying anything crazy like that again. Just a few months ago, I had a terrifying experience that I will never forget. It all started one night when I went on Facebook. As I was browsing the homepage, looking at posts from my friends and stuff, I got a notification of a new message. I clicked on it and saw that it was from a guy named James. I had worked with James a while back briefly. I didn't really know him that well, and had only spoken to him a few times at the job that we shared. I hadn't worked there in over a year though, and I didn't even know if he still worked there. James said hi to me, and I found it a little bit strange for him to randomly message me, but I said hi back to him. We got to talking a little bit, just catching up, or so I thought. But not long into this conversation at all, the messages from James started getting inappropriate. I stopped messaging him at that point, but he continued to send me more messages. It was at that moment that I decided to delete him as a friend. I wasn't even really friends with him in real life. I didn't know what got into him for him to randomly message me and then talk like that, but I figured that I wouldn't hear from him anymore. Several days went by, and I didn't. But then, one night, I was home by myself in my apartment. There was a random knock at my front door at 10 o'clock. I was not expecting anybody. I got up and walked over to the door. Before I opened it though, I decided to check through my peephole to see who was there. I thought maybe it was a neighbor, because who else would it be? But James was standing there. I found this to be really odd. How did he know where I lived? I never told him that. I chose not to answer, but he knocked again. I ignored this too. I honestly figured that he would probably leave after I didn't answer the door. I walked away and didn't hear any more knocking for a while. So I remember that probably 10 minutes later, I got up and went back over to the door. I expected James to be gone, but he wasn't. He was still standing there right outside of my door. And I think that he must have heard me walking to the door from the other side, because right after seeing him, he walked up to the door and tried to open it. The door was locked, so he didn't get in. Then I saw him go to his pocket and take something small out. He then went to the door and I believe started trying to pick the lock. As soon as I saw this, I took out my phone and I called for the police. I told them what was happening. They said they would be there as soon as possible. Then I went into my bedroom and locked the door. In case James broke in, I needed to get away from the front door. The police were fast to arrive. Within probably 5 minutes, they were at my apartment. James had not been able to pick my lock or get inside.
I remember hearing them talk to James, and I came out of my room and saw that they arrested James for attempting to break into my apartment. I never really got an answer as to why he did it, or why then. Either way, I'm hoping to never see James again.
It was March 12th, 2019. I was home alone that night. My parents were on vacation, and my sister was spending the night with her girlfriend. Nothing unusual. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I received a text from my boyfriend. We'll call him Mike. "Hey, what are you doing?" I texted him back saying, "I'm just chilling, nothing special." We chatted for a while, and we decided that he would come over to my house since everybody was gone. I sprang up from my bed and got myself ready. Some time passed before I heard a knock at my front door. That wasn't normal for him. He was one of those cliche boyfriends who would usually climb through my bedroom window. But since I was alone that night, I figured he didn't want to risk busting his ass. I went downstairs and looked through the peephole. No one was there. I then texted my boyfriend, "Hey, where do you go?" He opened the text and read it, but did not respond. I thought that was strange. My thoughts were immediately interrupted as I heard another loud set of knocks, this time at the back door. Now, I was becoming nervous, and a feeling of dread began to set in. I received another text, not from my boyfriend this time, but from his brother. I almost dropped the phone when I read what was on the screen. "Mike lost his phone earlier today. He wanted me to tell you that he's going to be busy tonight studying for his exams." My heart practically skipped a beat when I received another text from Mike's number. "You look so adorable in your pajamas." Now I knew that somebody I didn't know was outside, watching me. Thinking quickly, I called my boyfriend's number. I heard a ringtone from upstairs, in my bedroom. I ran down the hall to my parents' room. My dad always kept a gun in his closet. After locking the door, I pulled it out, asking myself if I could go through with actually shooting someone. I heard footsteps above me. They soon slowly made their way down the stairs. I called 911 and reported the break-in, whispering into the phone. The dispatch told me the cops would be on their way. My stomach dropped when another call came in. The intruder had dialed my number. In all the panic, I forgot to put my phone on silent. I then heard laughter coming from down the hall. I cannot explain to you how terrifying it is to hear someone laughing in that situation. I was now scared for my life. I then heard a loud bang on the bedroom door. It soon flew open as the intruder entered the room. I saw the shine of a knife in his hand as he raised it into the air. I staggered back, but aimed my father's pistol and pulled the trigger. Mind you, I had never fired a gun before. My dad showed me how to operate it, but hadn't taken me to the range yet. I can't explain how this happened because my eyes were closed. But the shot I fired knocked the knife from the intruder's hand. I then aimed the gun at his head. "Don't move," I told him, making my voice sound as aggressive as possible. The guy must have thought I was a sharpshooter and had no idea that I actually got lucky. The police soon arrived and forced their way inside the house. They followed my shouting and made their way to the bedroom, where I still had the intruder at gunpoint. 2 officers put the man into cuffs. Once I got a good look at him, I can honestly say that I didn't recognize him from anywhere. Once he was in the back seat of a cruiser, one of the officers sat me down and took my statement. Long story short, my parents ended their vacation early, and my sister came home the next day. We still have no idea how long he had been watching me for, and how he managed to get Mike's phone. We're all glad that I made it out of that situation alive, and that the man is where he belongs, in jail.